Great Euphoric High, Hideous Comedown, a Propylhexedrine trip report uploaded to Erowid in February of 2020. Gender, male. Body weight, 140 pounds. Age at the time of this experience, 24 years old. My 20s involved an absolutely absurd amount of drugs, including but by no means limited to propylhexedrine, the subject of this report. To this day there aren't many reports on propylhexedrine, or the purple as a friend referred to it, based on the name, not the color. So I've decided to share mine. All in all, I did propylhexedrine 3 or 4 times over the span of about 6 months, always exactly 250 milligrams, the amount present in one inhaler. Some of the reports I've read warn others away from the substance, due to the horrid menthol lavender taste, which you get to experience every time you burp for several hours, and the nausea that arises for them, in part because of the taste and also because their stomachs don't appreciate them eating the cotton rod. In the interests of harm reduction, I will say that eating cotton, especially cotton impregnated with lavender oil, is undoubtedly not good for you and has the potential for gastric obstruction. Breaking the cotton into smaller pieces may prevent this latter issue, but I would not swear by that. I have the digestive system of a mechanical wolf, though, so I neither suffered any nausea nor any gastric problems after ingesting the cotton rod. I actually enjoyed the taste of the lavender menthol flavoring. Then again, other than ayahuasca and one time, out of many, consuming mescaline-containing cactus, I rarely if ever vomit or even get nauseous with substances. Again, mechanical wolf. It has been about 10 years since the last time I did Benzedrex, for a reason alluded to by the title, so I am going to be somewhat vague on effects timing, regardless. Once I broke apart the inhaler, no easy task, intentionally I'm sure, and swallowed the cotton, I didn't expect much for a while. As I recall, the come-up was one of those where I thought nothing is happening for a bit, and then suddenly it hits in a great, strong euphoria, mental acuity and focus I don't usually have minus stimulants. And, unique to propylhexedrine, tingly rushes all over, especially on the scalp and the upper back. Given my inability to provide any sort of accurate timeline, I'm going to break from the usual experience report format and reference other stimulants I have consumed by means of comparison. Even for those who have not done any stimulants, I believe the descriptions forthcoming will provide enough of a backdrop for how Benzedrex behaves to be an effective portrayal of its effect. Stimulant-wise, my experiences are limited to amphetamine, Adderall, propylhexedrine, one extremely disappointing experience with cocaine, and methadone. I never had any interest in or access to MDMA. Cocaine literally had no effects on me, although judging from the impromptu and out-of-character gay make-out session that erupted around me at the time, it had effects on others. Crack always sounded like a terrible idea. And methamphetamine I have been tempted by but have been afraid to even try given how fiendish I get with the few stimulants I have tried. That being said, I would say that the best way to describe propylhexedrine is as a more euphoric, more focused, but also more hedonistic feeling version of amphetamine, or, in terms of methadone, it is a less euphoric but also less manic and, paradoxically, given that propylhexedrine is actually classified as a vasoconstrictor, far less vasoconstrictive. Amphetamine always resulted in euphoria for me, especially in doses of greater than 30 milligrams, but it was more a feeling of, yeah, getting stuff done. It's the same feeling I get when I've really gotten into the groove on a personal project, but pushier and, not surprisingly, more artificial feeling. The primary effects of amphetamines seem to be on cognition, clarity, and focus, with the euphoria being at least in part due to a feeling of being awake and clear and driven in a world I never really realized was so interesting. Propylhexedrine seems to act somewhat less on attention and focus, though cognition seems to be enhanced, and the euphoria is about as strong as one can get without veering off into the irrational and manic. As is typical for stimulants for me, I spent most of my 3 or 4 propylhexedrine experiences writing bizarre, often borderline pornographic things. There is a definite draw towards the sexual and the hedonistic with propylhexedrine, but nowhere near that of methadone. The tingly rushes one gets contribute to the overall euphoria and pleasure. Propylhexedrine allows you to exist, at least mentally, as a focused and driven yet uninhibited and hedonistic being for a good 6 to 8 hours. Then, without warning, it drags you straight into hell. And here we begin the negative portion of this report, the aforementioned hideous Comedown I referred to in the title. Amphetamine Comedowns are annoying. As time goes on, I gradually lose more and more of the superhuman focus I've become accustomed to and started sinking back into normal functioning. This coupled with the fact I probably stayed up all night, and the fact that the norepinephrine release was still going strong after the primary stimulant effects have left leaves me uninterested in everything, exhausted but unable to sleep, and irritable. My methadone Comedown was marred, I'm sure, by the horror at realizing that I could no longer run. I had to shuffle when I walked. My left foot was utterly unresponsive. And at the time, I had no idea whether I would ever recover, and I lacked the several $1,000s needed for an MRI to ascertain that for sure. Regardless, I couldn't sleep for a good 72 hours. And by the end of that, I was a paranoid mess. The anxiety I experienced was not something I'd wish on anyone. The propylhexedrine Comedown for me, though, was, in its own way, worse than the methadone Comedown. It wasn't an anxiety thing or an exhaustion thing. It wasn't even like the cocaine binge a friend told me about that left her mechanically passing a beach ball back and forth to her partner in crime in a hotel pool all the next day. Both of them hoping that by behaving as if things were fun, it would somehow clear things up and convince them that yes, someday they'd be able to experience happiness again. It was something else altogether. The closest I can come to describing it is another extremely ill-advised venture, that of a high dose, 500 milligrams or more, diphenhydramine experience. Propylhexedrine Comedowns, at least for me, were similar. It wasn't a question of being tired, or even of an inability to feel happiness. Exhaustion and anhedonia don't blunt negative emotions, they blunt the positive ones. It was more like having been sucked into an anti-universe of sorts where all emotion save for a feeling of intense disgust and perversity was completely and utterly impossible. Binging on insufflated Tusi, and by binging I mean 5 to 10 milligrams or so every couple of hours all night, is vaguely similar, but still nowhere near as horrific. Perhaps most frightening of all was the speed at which the Comedown asserted itself. It wasn't gradual in the slightest. It was more like suddenly someone pulling up a curtain to reveal a sun that makes its heat and light by roasting the souls of millions alive for untold eons. For that reason, I don't recommend this chemical. Every once in a blue moon, and infrequently even during those times, I pass by a rack of Benzedrex in the drugstore and very briefly consider doing it again. Then I weigh the anti-universe Comedown against whatever brief happiness I may experience while doing it, and resoundingly decide not to indulge. I don't necessarily regret the egregious excesses of my youth, but I have no desire to repeat them at this point. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe for more. Until next time.